So this is the Scalability team demo call. We're just giving a moment to see if anyone else is going to be joining. And there's Bob now. Bob, well, I was wondering if you wanted to show what we've just been talking about with the panels that have just been merged into the dashboard, and then the piece of work with the operation count that hasn't yet been merged.
Yeah, I was just reviewing that merge request. That's why I was late. So I can do that.
Thank you.
Wait, let me clean up some stuff first.
Hey, Maren, Bob's just getting ready to present.
Yeah, getting ready means closing stuff that I don't want to share on YouTube.
Is it that video that we shared on the Scalability Lounge this morning from New Zealand?
No, that's already on YouTube, so I'm not worried about that. No, but then I get messages from coworkers saying that Signal's still open and so on. So yeah.
Well, the reason that I'm excited about what Bob is going to show is because there was a conversation yesterday where the EMs were talking about being able to see into what was causing problems. And this gives them the ability to see it. And it would just be so nice to close the circle with what they're asking for by saying, well, here it is. You can see it here.
So am I sharing my screen? Yeah, I think so. What we've added is this row, which has a bunch of text explaining what is being shown. This is the most important part. It shows the breakdown of the error budget and where it's being spent. This is like the number of fail. Like this is supposed to. It's resembles the number of failures. So it's a total failures that have been tracked in the 28 days that are used for the budget. Fixing the highest one is what would help. And then because I couldn't figure out how to add links here, we've added the links here. So if you see that the aptX for Puma is the #1 source of the budget spent, then you can click open this link, which will result in a very slow table. And this is already, this version isn't deployed yet. It's what, including Sean's improvements, because I like it better. And that's going to show, I'm just going to ask Sean to sort it by this. It's going to show you the endpoints, how many total hits you've had, and how many of those were slower than the threshold. So that should allow to the people, the engineers and so on, to dig into where the budget is being spent. They start with the highest number here, and then look what endpoints, so Sidekick jobs or requests, are attributing to that high number. For now, we've only built these fancy links in Kibana for Puma and Sidekick because most people are spending most of their budget there. Yeah, that's it.
So, silly question, those failure rates, is that the thing I was asking difficult questions about?
That's the thing that sparked the discussion, because
yeah.
I called that failure rate, but it's not actually a failure rate because it's a sum over time of those failure rates.
Yeah.
But we don't have the actual counters.
When I see what it's for, I think the whole discussion is moot, because this is just for ranking and comparing things, and nobody cares what this number actually means.
No, it's just comparing which one's higher, but we use the same kind of sum over time for the query that fuels this.
You stop sharing your screen.
For the query that results in this, here's the same kind of sum over time. And we had it in the longer range ratios as well. So like if we have a recording for 3 days, Then we also do a sum over time of the, I think, 1 hour metric over 3 days.
I saw that you gave more concrete examples, which is great, but I haven't. I just saw it like 10 minutes before the call, and I started thinking about it, thinking, oh yeah, this is difficult. But now one of the 3 concrete examples you just showed on the screen, and I thought, okay, we can. From my point of view, we can stop talking about that particular one because if it's just a number to direct people, to point people in the right direction, and it doesn't really matter if it's.
We just want to know which one is highest.
Yeah, and it will only care over a short window. And like, if something strange would happen with the sampling rate, and these numbers jump up or down, then they would all jump up and down, and people would still
also
reliably pick the most important one.
The differences that I've seen between the highest and the next highest are big enough that 1 or 2 samples off would not make a difference, I think.
Yeah, and so
because
I think
there are 28
yeah,
days worth of samples.
Yeah, and I was looking at your comment, and I thought about this whole estimating rates over a longer window thing, and I have to think much harder about what that means. But I don't want to hijack this conversation. I just saw that one thing, and I wanted to check that that was the thing we were also talking about on the other issue. So thanks.
That's where it's started. But as you mentioned, this one
it's
is
a
not
technique
the important
we
one.
use in other places, and I will spend some more time thinking about what we're trying to do there.
I'm more interested in the other places, to be honest.
Yeah, because this is a ranking. This is really only about ranking and not about what the number means. Well, I mean, it is about what the number means, but not in a very detailed way.
It's about how high the number is. No, how much higher the number is than another number, not the exact number.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, everyone else, that was very vague because you're not in that thread.
And thanks for showing us that, Bob. Also, while we're on that, I also just wanted to say, like, thank you also to Andrew for helping to prep getting to the point that we're able to do this, because it feels like there's a whole bunch of work that's happened underneath this, and being able to take the result, which is the error budgets, and show it to the PMs and the EMs is just excellent. And so I just wanted to say thank you for the prep that's gone underneath that.
Well, thank you to everyone who's done all the proper work.
The thing is, it took me a while to understand where we were going with all the stuff. Like, we've started adding feature category. Like, that's the first thing we did that was pushing us like in this obvious direction. And that was like by now 1.5 years ago. And then I didn't understand yet what it's going to be useful for.
Yeah, I think what we said was like, one of the things that like when we were thinking about what the scalability team was going to do, it was like, we've got a monolith, and we're not, whether we like it or not, the monolith is going to stay. So we need to figure out a way to have attribution. Like in other big companies, what they do is they just break it down into services, and it's really easy to blame a team on, this service is this team's.
I thought you were going to say it's really easy to just break it down into services, but
no, it's really easy to do attribution with. One of the things about or any sort of service architecture is that attribution becomes easier. And so it's like, how do we do this inside the monolith? And I think like we kind of setting up some really cool things here. And I don't know if you've seen that the database team are now going through a similar exercise with the tables. And actually on that, I think it would be really good for someone from the Scalability team to get involved, because they're still talking about team attribution. And I think they should be talking about feature category attribution of the tables, right? And using the at least on, I don't know how many tables we can do it on, but where possible, use the attribution framework that we've got on those entities, or something similar for active record entity.
Totally add it, because we already added it to classes. That's the thing. So we can add it to models.
Can
exactly.
Add that issue back into the doc, the one about the database table attribution.
Yeah, let me find it. But yeah, I mean, we really should. I pinged you on. It was in the InfoDev, wasn't it? For
You,
dev.
you did ping me and then I replied,
Yeah.
and now I don't know where it is.
Yeah, let's go look here.
Yeah, be a shame if they reinvent some of this attribution stuff.
Yeah.
If it's really trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Also, the reason we did the feature categories and not groups, like there might be discussing, is because groups change all the time.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
exactly
apart
it,
from
yeah.
that, well, there's that, but there's also just duplicate work to keep track of these things. Yeah.
Well, as I've seen now with something that Kwangmin was building to add the feature categories into Sentry, but we're on a lower version of Sentry that doesn't allow filtering for multiple categories at once. Might be handy to have the thing that we now have in metrics, the mapping that maps as a feature category to a group inside something in the application as well. And yeah, but brainstorming, never mind.
And can we get feature category rate limiting for certain teams? Anyway.
we could make the error budget a hard limit. Like as soon as you're over, it's done.
Yeah, no more Sentry errors for you today. Sorry, you've spent your Sentry. Cool. Do you want to move on? I thought I was madly trying. Yeah, I was madly trying to find one of these series while we were going through the last thing, and I have been unable to find one, but I'm still going to try explain it. But this might be a very poor demo. So kind of the type that we are. So what it was Craig and I were talking this morning, and Craig had this issue. Actually, maybe I've found one here. Craig pointed out this issue where he was looking at the rate of certain sidekick jobs, and he knows that they get called very, very infrequently. So once an hour or once every 6 hours. But if you did a rate on them, a rate on the job, they always came back as like 0.0, not 0 point something, 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 and then a little number, but flat 0. And it doesn't make any sense because we know that these cron jobs run once every now and again. And so Craig, one of the things that Craig's looking at doing is putting better monitoring on these low frequency but high importance jobs like the stuck CI worker, and which hasn't been running for months. And because it's below the threshold that we allow for our monitoring, we basically ignore it, but it's critical, so we can't do that. And so we were looking at it, and we discovered a really interesting thing. And so I thought it would be good to bring it up in the demo. But of course, I can't find one of these jobs now. I was madly trying to find one.
One that's 0.
Yeah, that's exactly. So I know that the one that we were looking at this morning was the stuck CI.
What if you add a less than 0.1 to the query?
No, yeah, I tried to. It's let's just see if we can sidekick jobs bucket. But you see, it's not happening now because this was certainly one of them that we saw it on. These numbers were flat 0, and you know what? Maybe it's actually, if I do it in this morning, but we know why this is, and it is very interesting.
I see zeros.
Yeah, here we go. So yeah, this is a perfect example. So that's actually really interesting that it changes through the day as well. It's part of the mystery. So here we have a, and we'll just pretend we were this morning, like when I was talking to Craig, because that's a better result. Oh, sorry. Okay, and I'm probably going to have to do this. As I said, this is a very rough demo, so apologies for that. Here we go. Okay. So wow, okay. So this job, this CI drop pipeline worker, it ran on, let's try zoom in on this period a bit until when was that? 9th at 22. Right. So we know that this job ran at 1946. Okay. And if we go and look at a rate on that job, right, we get 0. But we know that it ran and it's not 0. And actually, if you aggregate these across the entire cluster, you can get 0 when these jobs are running. And so we're like, is it a bug in Prometheus? What's going on? And then it became very obvious.
What if you make the range window bigger than 1 hour?
Yeah.
Like make it 12. No, not that one in the query where it says 1 hour.
Oh, 12 hours. I don't think it'll help. No, it won't help.
Okay.
So we were looking at it, and then it struck me what the problem was here. And this is something that is going to affect like a whole bunch of these low frequency jobs. And actually, it's got worse since we've moved to Kubernetes, right? And I'll explain what it is. The reason why it's 0 is because we lazy initialize these sidekick metrics. Which way did we go? We made this longer, didn't we? 12, let's make it 2 hours. In fact, I'll make this 5 minutes. There. So when this process, the sidekick process starts, it doesn't initialize that sidekick metric to 0. It just, that particular series for the CI drop pipeline worker in this case just didn't exist, right? And the moment that it comes into existence is the moment at which we set it to 1, right? And so the rate over there, it's just the derivative on that number there. It never went from 0 to 1. It just appeared into existence at 1. And so when we have containers that are starting up much more frequently than before, very often they go from absent to 1, and they never increase.
They go to 1, and then before they go to 2, the container is shut down.
Yes.
And they were never at 0.
And then they disappear. And they never, and we see this happening all the time with these low frequency jobs. So we always lose the first, basically we always lose the first one. And for a lot of jobs, that doesn't really matter too much because they're high, 10 times a second or whatever. If you lose one, it doesn't matter. But for the low frequency jobs that don't happen very often, it makes a big difference. And so I said, well, maybe what we can do, my first proposal, which is a horrible proposal, but it's easy to do, was let's just, when the job starts, we initialize it to 0, but lots of these jobs will run for less than 15 seconds. So we'll set it to 0, we'll set it to 1, and then the scrape will happen and it'll just have the same effect. So we spoke about it, and really
Andrew, do you, what happens if you add 1 inside the rate? So I would guess that null plus 1 is still null, but null plus 0 is 1.
No, I think I'm pretty sure the way it happens in Prometheus is that it will because it doesn't see the step up. The one place where Prometheus is different is if you have a reset on a counter, right? Then it will say, okay, it was 5, and then the next time we scraped it was 3, and then it will kind of like find the equidistant middle point on that. Right. And that's why often and that's often why if you have something that very clearly is like integers, like whole numbers, and you do a rate on it, you'll get like an increase of 5.3 because it's those interpolations that make them into real numbers. But it doesn't obviously do that at the beginning. It just goes, because it doesn't know if it started at 0. It doesn't know like that I at least, and I said to Craig,
never sees a 0 if I got it right.
No, never. Yeah. So what we have to do, I think, is when a process starts, we're going to have to precede these to 0 for all of the jobs that could possibly run on that process.
Well, yeah, for all of the jobs that could possibly run, that might be a good idea, because I had a similar problem once, and then we decided that it was for low frequency endpoints, so HTTP requests. And then I think it was Sean and me said, okay, we'll just initialize all these metrics. And then we had a cardinality explosion of routes that are never going to be used on GitLab.com.
Yeah.
So then Ben was angry at us, and we did like the middle ground.
So another approach
yeah.
you could take is to think of this as a short-running process that can't get scraped. And then the way to get metrics would be a push gateway.
Unfortunately not, because push gateway doesn't work very well as an aggregator. You like push gateway doesn't have the concept of like updating state. It's not like statsd where you say increment this counter. You say this metric is 1, and then the next time you run, you don't know what the old metric was. It's not like Redis, if you want, where you kind of send it an update or increments or anything like that. It's you only give it and push gateway is kind of very it guards that sort of thing very much. It says you can't be the opposite of that. So I don't think that there's an easy way to do it with push gateway.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
It's also not nice to have some special
Yeah.
treatment for cron jobs compared to other CI jobs.
So what Craig said he would do, because we obviously recognize that there's a cardinality problem here. And so Craig was going to go do the maths to figure out whether this would just completely blow everything out of the water. But I think it's better to be correct, because we've seen what can happen when these jobs are failing all the time, and it's a bad thing. And so if we can get it down to only the jobs that run on a certain fleet, it might be okay, because eventually it'll get up to that number.
Another way of looking at it is that we are updating counters spread across many different series where they should be one series. So if we had a single counter we were updating in, say, Redis, then you don't have the cardinality problem anymore, because there can be any number of, right? Because every pod will start a new series.
Yeah, but
For
then you'd
these
need
kind
to
of things, I also think we should be looking at it from the other side. So not that the jobs run, but that the work they are supposed to do is done. That's something that we were taking a look at for deleting artifacts.
The problem is that that's not
CI
generic,
stuff.
because whether that work gets done is completely dependent on what the worker's supposed to do, and whether a job runs is something universal.
Yeah, I'm not saying we don't need to solve this, but I mean that it's like this particular problem we could have seen on the other side, and we would have known.
Yeah, but only if everybody. So then everybody who creates a critical cron job needs to also set up some sort of monitoring that tells them that the critical cron job is running. And that is a strong assumption to make, that this happens for all critical cron jobs.
So I think the easiest solution will be to figure out how many more series it's going to be, and then if it's a lot, then it's time to break Prometheus-app down into Prometheus-app and Prometheus-sidekick. That's like the boring solution. And if it's not that many, we can just keep them all in Prometheus app. I suspect that it's much fewer series than we have in Prometheus DB, which has got all the PG stat statements combinations, which is like a lot of data.
If we're only updating these latencies, that's I guess that would be the number of buckets times the number of workers times
like
the
if
number
you
of
look,
pods. But then you have an increase because of the number of pods, but pods go out of existence, and then Prometheus should garbage collect them, or how does that work towards cardinality?
It's fine kind of in the now, but where it gets really heavy, because this was where it gets really painful is that when you do a rate over like 6 hours or something like that, it's still got to go and like, go to all of these different buckets. I don't, I think the simple solution is just to pre-initialize if we can, like if, that
Yeah.
keeps things simple. But we've just got to figure out the
It's
cardinality
also what
problem.
Prometheus recommends in the end, isn't it?
They do, yeah. But I've never seen them give this reason, and I thought that's a really, we should change the documentation. Maybe it has, maybe I didn't read it properly.
Yeah, we also have some very low frequency Kitely RPCs, but there we've used a middleware from the start that pre-initializes all the counters.
And also with Giddily, generally the processes are going to last long enough that
Right,
the
you don't have that
counters will
particular
probably,
problem. Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of an interesting edge case. But in order for the stuff that Craig's looking at to kind of really be properly done, we will probably have to consider doing that. I also think, we've had 3 Prometheuses for a long time. So, if we have to break that into 4, it's, not the end of the world. Promethei.
I faintly remember that one of the SRE books talks about low frequency jobs in the context of SLOs, but I haven't looked up what they say about it. Do you happen to remember, Andrew?
Yes. So the number one thing that they say is that, can you increase the frequency? And Craig and I discussed that this morning.
I was wondering that too. Okay.
Because and I think, but what we said was that that's probably going to take some time, and we need to engage with teams, because what you probably find with a lot of them is, if we call them once an hour, it'll be like 10 seconds worth of work once an hour. And a lot of them probably you'll find if you call them once every half an hour, it's maybe 6 seconds. So, because a lot of them, the work will probably be quite divisible. So you're not creating a lot more work by running it more frequently, if you know what I mean. But that will require like engagement with teams, and it's kind of like a 1-by-1 sort of thing. So we don't really want to do that. So what we spoke about, it might even be in this query. Let's take a look.
Well, there's another reason why it's a good design, right? Because if something needs to happen regularly, you do a big, like you can catch up on a missed job sooner.
That's, yeah, exactly. So, but going back to your original question, we had quite a long discussion around this, and we both got very excited about it. And it's a very nerdy discussion. So this is what we've got at the moment. This is fundamentally wrong. So we've got, it's not fundamental, it's like the last level of maturity. So now we're getting to the next level of maturity. So we have this as our 1 hour and our 5-minute rates. And then we have this as our 6 hour and our 30-minute rates. Okay. So the first thing that we really need to do is break that into 2 alerts, because then you can start doing really nice things. Like if you had a really bad morning and we had a whole bunch of stuff, and we know that we've spent our 6-hour budget, you can silence the 6-hour budget and still get the alert for the 1 hour. If things drop off again, you can say, okay, well, something really bad's happening now. So there's a nice thing that happens there. But the other thing that's really, I think, really nice is you can take this clause over here is a bit rubbish, because it's saying that for us to do any alerting on this SLO, over 6 hours, we need 0.1 rate on the job consistently. And so what we can do instead is we can say, in order for us to do alerting, we need to have 10 samples. And it doesn't matter whether those samples happen like in a second or in the 6-hour period. We're going to say that the minimum alerting threshold is 10 samples. And the way that we can do that is we take this clause over here and we move it into these 2 things like this. Live coding, my favorite thing, not. And then we do that. And then this is obviously a second alert, but we say here, we say that times 3600, that'll give us effectively the number of samples, because the rate is per second and there's 3,600 in an hour. And then we say that needs to be greater than 10, or whatever that we choose as the magic low minimum of samples that we need in order to evaluate the service. And then we say pretty much the same thing over here. And again, we just say it's on except here we got it on the 6-hour rate, and we say times 6 times is more than 10 samples. And then the last thing that we do is we set up the 3-day, 1 day, 3 day, the third tier, which we don't have. And it's also something that we should really fix. And that will also say that over a 3-day period, you have to have 10 samples as well. And so then we get away from this, like having a minimum rate, of a very, over 6 hours at a minimum rate of 0.1, that's, thousands of, well, it's 1,000 something samples, which is actually very, very high. So we can break that down and still monitor the low frequency jobs.
When you say samples, you mean operations?
Yeah, and it's the same. So when I say sample, I'm thinking of it from a sort of statistical point of view, but it's each operation is one sample that we're including. And the reason we had that ops filter was to just kind of filter out low sample rates, where you get 3 things and, it's not enough data to really build something up here. So if we let's just take this and see if this works. Interesting.
Live coding, no data.
Live coding, yeah. I wonder what we've done wrong here. And
we probably didn't actually have a violation that meets the first clause.
Yeah. But yeah, so but basically then we can, over a longer period, we can start doing monitoring of the low frequency jobs. The other thing is just worth pointing out is we'll never have these the 3-day, the long period monitoring go to SRE on call. We have that go straight to an issue tracker, and we can use the feature category routing that we've got for that. So then instead of us getting a job about stuck CI jobs not working, it goes straight to the, this is kind of the future. This is a few steps ahead, right? But there's no reason why the SRE on call needs to deal with that. It should just go straight to the team that's responsible for that job.
You're talking now specifically about Sidekick, though.
Yeah. In the Sidekick case, yeah. So
I was going to say I have many times wished for the split between the long-term and short-term burn rates. So I think that's a generally fantastic idea. Okay,
cool. Yeah, it's pretty easy to. I've been meaning to do it for a long time as well, but now seems like a good. Oh, there's one slightly not even complicated, but slightly complicated thing that we have to take into account, and that is that often when things go really pear-shaped, the long and the short both instantly drop, and so one of the things that we don't have in our alert manager config at the moment is we don't use. I even forgot the name of it. Alert manager's got a thing where you can silence one alert based on the existence of another alert. And so what we don't want to do is send 2 pager duties to the SRE on call to say your 6-hour and your 1-hour are both violating now. Here's two pager duties. We only want one. And what are they called? Suppression rules. And we can set up a suppression rule in Alert Manager to say, if the 1 hour is firing, forget about the 6-hour. We don't care about that. We just tell the person. The only thing that I have a slight concern about is if you get those suppression rules wrong, you could do really horrible things by accident. And so that's why I've always been a little bit cautious about when I'm going to roll those out. But
yeah, I personally would just accept that we're going to get double paged as an initial step. Speaking as an on-call, my pager often blows up with multiple alerts at the same time. So it's not pleasant by any means, but it's tolerable.
Okay. Yeah, then maybe that is a reasonable minimum viable product.
Exactly, and I love the idea of the suppression rules, but I would say it's totally fine to just get comfortable with first doing the split.
Okay, cool. That will be quick.
That's my opinion anyway.
Cool. I think that's all we can say about that.
Or is there anything else that anyone would like to demo or to show? Great. Well, thank you so much for that. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Have a good one.